What's good, Atlanta? This is the Blog and Dirty podcast, where Dirty Bird is the word if you haven't heard. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer, fanside.com. Coming to you guys today at the start of free agency. Obviously, the last couple of days have been very tumultuous here in Dirty Bird Nation. During the legal tampering period, we're going to touch on all the signings, all the departures, everything that's going on with the Falcons heading into the new league year. It's going to be a good show. It's going to be a tight show, and there may be stuff that happens as the show is going on. But I've got the tracker up to date from AtlantaFalcons.com. Obviously, the writing staff there with Will McFadden, Tori McElhenney, and Taryn Wack has plenty of stuff on here to keep tabs on. So they're doing a good job of curating everything here. So let's just start with how we're feeling. Let's start with some vibe check here. How should Atlanta Falcons fans be feeling after the first wave of NFL free agency? I got to be honest, you can feel however you want to feel about it. I'm not here to tell you if you should feel optimistic or depressed. We know that this fan base is tortured. We know there are people in here who are just so incredibly pessimistic. I've seen that over there on the fine website of x.com. Just keep in mind what free agency is. This is essentially a garage sale. This is different than in MLB. This is different than in the NBA because in the NFL, not many of the best players in the sport ever get to free agency. Do you think the Kansas City Chiefs are ever going to let Patrick Mahomes get to the market? No. Cincinnati Bengals may eventually let Joe Burrow get there, but that's kind of more about them than anything else. The point is, if you've got a guy on your team who's a bona fide superstar, he's not going to market. Your team is too well run or too competent to let that happen. So a lot of these players that you see hitting the market, for lack of a better word, the other teams decided to let them walk for any number of reasons. They feel that maybe they're on the decline. They feel that they're not a fit for what the new team is doing under a new scheme with a new coach, new general manager, what have you. There's also a belief that a player may not necessarily be worth what they're commanding on the open market, and maybe you get priced out. What people have to understand is every team in the NFL is given the same resources. You're given the same salary cap. You're given the same draft picks. It's all about how you allocate them. This is a league driven by parity. So if you have a terrible season, you get rewarded by having one of the best picks in the draft. But if you make dumb mistakes in the draft and in free agency and in trades and even in season with games, like you pay a price for it. So I can say from the negatives, we'll start pessimistic and try to go optimistic, try to have good vibes here heading into hump day here on Wednesday. If you want to be pessimistic about the Falcons, you can go right ahead. There are people out there who are saying Terry Fontenot is a bottom 5 general manager in the NFL. You could argue that. I don't think he is. I think there's some general managers out there who are way worse. I would say that Joe Schoen is terrible. Obviously, people out there know how I feel about Chris Ballard there with the Indianapolis Colts. There's other general managers out there too. I'm not going to rattle them off, but there are other ones out there that have made more mistakes than Terry Fontenot has in 4 years. But at the same time, you look at the 2021 NFL draft class for the Falcons, the only guy left is Kyle Pitts, and he might get traded. We've seen Drew Dalman sign with the Bears. We saw Richie Grant sign with the 49ers. Jalen Mayfield last year for about a day. Obviously, you can be pessimistic about this. There's not a lot of cap space here. You got a lot of money tied up in Kirk Cousins. We'll see what happens there. But you're also not paying Michael Penix Jr. very much. You didn't have a lot of stuff to work with and play with in free agency this year, as opposed to a year ago. So keep that in mind. You can see other teams out there making moves. You've seen the Vikings make a bunch of moves. You've seen the Commanders make a bunch of moves. The Bills have made a bunch of moves. The Patriots have made a bunch of moves. Chargers have made some moves. It all really depends on how much capital you have available. And there's teams out there that don't really have much that, they got to wait for the second wave of free agency and the third wave of free agency to crash over them. Now, if you want to be optimistic after a really brutal Monday, Tuesday ended in a lot better fashion here. Falcons made their first signing of note. They got linebacker Divine Deablo from the Raiders out of Virginia Tech. He comes in there. He effectively replaces Nate Landman at linebacker, who was non-tendered. Again, I've got other moves on here too. I think D'Alford and Nate Landry were non-tendered, so they're free to go as restricted free agents, if you will. Falcons have also, they extended Liam McCollum at snapper. They also extended Jake Matthews. They also let Grady Jarrett walk, and he went to they released him, and he went to the Bears with Drew Dalman as well. So, but Devon Deablo came back. We also saw the Falcons extend Mike Hughes. He played really great for the Falcons last year. Certainly really thrived there playing for Raheem Morris. And then the biggest one of all, Leonard Floyd did. Leonard Floyd's welcome back to Georgia, bud. Yes, as anybody who follows the show knows, I'm a proud University of Georgia alum, so I root for the Dogs on Saturdays and the Falcons on Sundays. So I get everything in the spectrum here of being a tortured fan. Georgia's had great seasons of late. Falcons, not so much, but still remain optimistic. I'll touch more on the Leonard Floyd signing. He comes over for on a one-year deal for $10 million to reunite with his former defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, where they were back with the LA Rams. So again, that has me feeling optimistic a little bit. We'll see what happens today, tomorrow, throughout the rest of the weekend and the weekend. I have a feeling that Atlanta might potentially be in the market to trade for somebody like Trey Hendrickson. We'll see what happens with the other guys in the defensive line market here as well. But, with Vibe Check, it's kind of mixed reviews, and that's kind of how we feel about the Falcons right now. So let's move on to our next topic here with some He Gone. We'll touch on the guys who are no longer part of this team. Send them adieu here. We've got Drew Dalman, Grady Jarrett, and Richie Grant. They headline former Falcons players on the way out of town. Drew Dalman signed with the Bears for $14 million. Grady Jarrett, I'm looking at exactly what they have on here for the longest tenure Falcon. I've got stuff on here. I think it's 3-year deal for $43.5 million overall, $28.5 million fully guaranteed. He goes to the Bears as well after getting released by the Falcons. And then looking at what Richie Grant got, let's see where does it show on here? Richie Grant, 1-year deal with the 49ers. We'll see if he can learn a playbook in a year. Didn't seem to do that in 4 years here, but it was tough to see, Dalman and Jarrett both leave for the same team. Well, Dalman I interviewed him last year on the show. He seemed pretty comfortable, pretty happy playing with the Falcons. Seemed to have a really good rapport here with the offensive line. Loves Jake Matthews, knows how great of a player Chris Lindstrom is at guard. Loves playing alongside Caleb McGarry as well. And I think the emergence of Matthew Bergeron at the other guard spot, that was huge as well. But I think for the price point, I think for the fact that he was injured, I think the fact that Ryan Newsel came in there and played pretty well, I think for the money and the Falcons, what they don't have in available resources, Dalman was a easy candidate for them to potentially let go. It sucks, because he's going to go to the Bears. He's going to snap the ball to Caleb Williams, a team that also will be trying to vie for a playoff spot with its second-year starting quarterback. We'll see if Ben Johnson is as good as everybody thinks he is as a head coach. I don't think so. I think the Bears are so hopelessly dysfunctional. But I think the Bears getting players like Dalman and Jarrett in the trenches is good for them and not probably so great for us. Obviously, it kind of came as a surprise that, not that like Jarrett got released. I think that people were looking at him as a potential cap casualty throughout all this. But I think the fact that the money may have been close, maybe he just wanted out. The fact, I think he grew up in Rockdale County, went to Clemson. We all know his father is Jesse Tuggle. I don't know what the nature of their relationship. It doesn't matter. But he was born to be a Falcon, and he played here for 10 years. Tremendous player. He'll obviously be in the Ring of Honor one day. But I think maybe the fact he didn't fit what Raheem Morris wanted to do in the trenches. I think more importantly, he was one of the two guys on defense that had played for Jeff Ulbrich before, back in 2020 with AJ Terrell as a rookie and Grady Jarrett, I think in year 5 or 6 out of Clemson at that point. So to see him go and to see him sign with the Bears that quickly, in the wake of Dalman going there, yeah, that certainly stung. Really kind of made a very sour day out here for Dirty Bird Nation on Monday, but obviously Tuesday was a lot better. As far as Richie Grant is concerned, maybe he'll have great success there with the 49ers. I'm skeptical of it. Really was kind of got lost in the shuffle with the NFL. Again, seemed like the game never slowed down for him. Second round pick out of UCF. Again, that's one of those things where probably one of the worst draft picks Raheem Morris made. Oh, not Raheem Morris. Terry Fontenot made. you got to remember that at the time, UCF was not Power 4. They were a Group of 5 team. And I think anytime you're going for a guy out of the Group of 5 in day 2, you got to be sure. Because, like, yeah, even though, like, UCF made the leap up to the Big 12, they were terrible. They haven't really done well since they've gone there. But I also say that, like, you can't, you got to hit on those day 2 picks, man. Like, and I think that that's something that a lot of people have really gotten frustrated with regarding Terry Fontenot. I mean, Richie Grant and Jalen Mayfield basically gave us nothing in the 21 class. I know people are especially down on Kyle Pitts. Maybe he doesn't fit the scheme. Maybe he wasn't as good as we thought he was coming out of Florida. Doesn't matter. I mean, the whole 2021 draft class was an absolute crapshoot. Everybody made mistakes. So, like, just a bad draft across the board. But I think really what it comes down to with Dalman and Grant both leaving as part of that 21 class, it's kind of a reminder of, like, the consequences of not hitting in day 2 with Grant and Mayfield. But then you do hit with Dalman in day 3, but you've made such other strange and bad moves that you can't afford to bring him back. This is the type of player that, like, when you hit on the draft, you want to be able to extend because, like, he's going to be making more money than he did on his rookie contract. But, like, these are the type of moves that you make where you're like, we're not just getting a Pro Bowler here. We're getting a high end starter that we can continue to build our team around. A lot of the best teams out here have players that were successes in rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Half the league is undrafted, so keep that in mind. So again, I'm looking at this. Those are the former players that are gone. We'll see what happens with probably not expecting Matthew Judon back here after 1 year. Justin Simmons, it's looking more and more like he's probably going to go to the Eagles and reunite with Vic Fangio, his former head coach in Denver. That's kind of where things are trending in that direction as well. Again, at the top of the show, I mentioned that D. Alford and Nate Landman are free agents now, probably not coming back. And again, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But, like, we may see a few more moves happen today, Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend. Again, Atlanta's not swimming in cap space, but, like, these are the 3 biggest names to note who are not coming back. Moving on to our third topic with some he coming. Yeah. I think I stole that from, like, what was it? I stole it from, like, Ed Orgeron. He's like, he coming. So that's how he used to say it, like, back at LSU the day. So it's the counter of he gone. I use these 2 segments on False Start with my boss.com colleague, Cody Williams. So anytime we're talking about transactions of note, particularly with coaches or coordinators, that's what we use. I guess that's what I'm going to use here for free agency because why not? Who cares? So obviously the big names that are coming to the Falcons are Leonard, Floyd, and Divine Deablo. We've also saw the Falcons extend Mike Hughes in the secondary, Jake Matthews at left tackle, and long snapper Liam McCullough. This is essentially what we're looking at. It kind of lines up with what I was hoping for. It seems as though Atlanta, again, with what they did in, going up to the combine in Indianapolis, it's looking more and more like they're going to be drafting defensive heavy. And I think they're going to be looking at the secondary as well. Because, again, you're losing Alford. You lost Grant. You're probably going to lose Simmons. It would not shock me if the Falcons took someone like Will Johnson at number 15, maybe Jahdae Barron out of Texas, Malachi Starks, someone like that in the secondary. I also saw somewhere out there that Atlanta might actually consider trading back, which would be out of their nature. You get more draft picks at that point. But, like, I think the reason that might happen is it's multi-pronged. Let's say it costs the Falcons a second-round pick to get Trey Hendrickson. Well, if you trade back from 15 to 20, you can still probably get an edge rusher of note, pick up another pick, and go from there. But I just kind of feel that, like, the first 2 picks, whatever they are, whatever they become, whether that's a trade or not, will be defensive heavy for Atlanta. Because, again, I don't think they have a 3rd-round pick. That's gone to the Patriots as part of the Matthew Judon trade of last year. I understand the moment why you did it. You owed it to yourself to try. It didn't work out. This is life. So, but again, I'm really ecstatic about Leonard Floyd coming over here. It's a 1-year deal worth $10 million. He reunites with Raheem Morris, probably one of the coaches that helped turn his career around in the NFL. He was also, I think, top 10 pick out of Georgia by the Chicago Bears in the 2016 draft. Ryan Pace was the GM at that point. Obviously, he's got a very integral role here in Terry Fontenot's front office. They have connections from having worked with the New Orleans Saints in yesteryear. So Leonard Floyd, again, this is one of the I've covered him. I've watched him play. He went to Georgia immediately after I left. So we're probably about 4 or 5 years apart in age. Again, he's in his 30s now at this point as well. This is going to be year 10 for him out of Georgia. I think he played 4 with the Bears, 3 with the Rams, 1 with the Bills, and last year with the 49ers. Since leaving the Bears, he's been able to get about 10 sacks a year. I saw somewhere on Twitter, I wish I could remember who gave credit to. Like, he was able to get after the passer, I think 13% of the time in his rushes, which is, I think, 2.5% better than the best guy in the Falcons this past year. And again, I think that might have been Ebiketie. I'm not entirely sure, but again, this is a guy who knows the defense, who's really focused on becoming more of a student of the game. That was kind of always my biggest critique on Floyd coming out of Georgia. Immense talent. He'd get in the backfield, wouldn't always make the plays. Again, he was a Mark Richt guy. He could have come back for his senior year at Georgia, but didn't want to play for Kirby Smart and rebuild, so he went pro. Plus, he probably made the right decision for himself financially to go get that 4-year deal with the Bears. Came out well with that. He's been part of a Super Bowl team, helping the Rams win it all in 21 with Raheem Morris as the defensive coordinator, his first year there after leaving the Falcons. Again, he probably knows Zach Robinson as well from their time in LA too. I think a guy who, I think he's from Chauncey, Georgia, went to a military academy, came to Georgia. Immensely talented, kind of a bit unrefined. That was kind of the trait of guys who played for Mark Richt in that era. What I think is important to understand with Leonard Floyd is he's like a high-end number 2 pass rusher. If you're asking him to be your number 1, you're going to fail, which is why I'm of the belief Atlanta will be in hot pursuit of trying to trade for like someone like Trey Hendrickson. It's the same thing. Like, again, he's more of a pass rusher than what Jadeveon Clowney was. Like, Jadeveon Clowney was kind of hyped up as being like the superstar on the defensive end, kind of more of an edge setter, kind of more of a run stuffer, like a really good number 2 next to a number 1 like J.J. Watt. And that's when he played his best football with the Texans. So just kind of being well aware of what Leonard Floyd is. I think he's better than what we've had with, his former teammate Lorenzo Carter. Again, I feel like Azeez Ojulari, another player with the Giants with Georgia connection, who I thought Atlanta could be in on. We'll see how the medicals go. Maybe he does end up here. Again, those are like number 2 guys. And again, the number 1 edge rushers are out there. It's so hard to find. We thought Matthew Judon was that. He used to be that, and he wasn't that here anymore. But I think just having a better scheme fit, having a better understanding of what they're trying to do, $10 million for 1 year of Leonard Floyd, a guy who gets about 10 sacks a year, somewhere in the 8 to 10 range, that's great. I also think the fact that he doesn't miss games, missed a few during his first couple of years there with the Bears, but has been really steady. And I think that like just having him out there, he'll be able to make that play or two that the defense has not been able to. You get that pressure on the quarterback, you get that pick, you get that sack, you get that turnover. Then maybe you win more than 7 or 8 games. Maybe you win closer to 9, 10, maybe 11. Again, the NFC South is wide open. I think this move makes us better. I don't know if it does enough to offset losing the likes of Grady Jarrett and Drew Dalman in free agency. But again, this is a different era of Atlanta Falcons football. This seems to work. I'm okay with that. Moving on to Divine Deablo. Again, I don't really know much about him. I know he played his last 4 years there with the Raiders, became a starter. Again, this is kind of like replacing Nate Landman, if you will. Went from Winston-Salem, played his college football at Virginia Tech. I guess he played for Justin Fuente. I had to look this up pre-show. I'm like, what's Justin Fuente even doing now? He was out of football last year, was out of football in 22. He'd been an analyst there at Indiana under Tom Allen in 23. This was the guy that was kind of picked to be the heir apparent to Frank Beamer there in Blacksburg. It just didn't work out. Goes to show how good of a head coach and iconic one he is, because Virginia Tech's kind of gone back to what they've been, which was just pedestrianly mediocre without its greatest head coach of all time. But I think with Deablo coming over from the Raiders to the Falcons, he's going from a dysfunctional organization to a slightly less dysfunctional one, still one of the same. But I think like this is a piece that they probably identified in free agency throughout the process. Like, okay, I think this is going to work for us. Most people seem to be on board with it. It's not the high profile one. It's not the sexy one like Leonard Floyd, but this may actually work out being better than this. I remember back in 2020, 2021, something like that during free agency with just, doing car wheels in the streets over getting Dante Fowler Jr. Didn't work out. He reunited with Dan Quinn, didn't matter. But there's also been signings out there. I knew Alex Mack was going to be great. Had no idea how good Mohamed Sanu was going to be. I had a feeling that Jesse Bates was going to be phenomenal. Again, you don't really know. But I think this is in line with what the Falcons want to do in addressing the front seven in free agency. I think this kind of says that they're probably not going to be going linebacker in the first or second round in the draft. Again, they might double up. We'll see. But this makes me feel a little better about the front seven. I think obviously extending Mike Hughes. I'm going to make sure I got this right. I think it's a 3-year deal with 3-year deal, $18 million. He started 15 games for the Falcons last year. I think this is one of those things where this is a player who seemed to thrive in the system. He gets rewarded for it. Throughout the season, he got better and better with each game. I feel like he really grew and thrived under Raheem Morris's coaching. And I think this kind of is a move that helps set them up or reshuffle the deck a little bit with what they want to do in the secondary. We know how good Jesse Bates is. We know how good AJ Terrell is. We know how expensive they are. But having Hughes here, again, this takes some pressure off of okay, what do we do if we don't want Alford here? What are we going to do? Are we going to lose Simmons to the Eagles? What are we going to do? You bring Hughes back. You knew Grant was going to be gone. Maybe you see what DeMarco Hellams does in his first year back from injury. Again, he started some games towards the end of the 23 season. Again, the secondary is Raheem Morris's position of strength. He probably knows that better than anything else. I think for the Falcons to really get where they need to go heading into next year, they got to be locked in. They got to be tight. They got to be really good at the back end. Like they were at the start of the year, and then things hit the fan. Again, Jeff Ulbrich is a former linebacker, played for the 49ers in the 2000s when they were not really good, to be honest with you. Maybe the tail end with Harbaugh. Certainly not good there in the post Steve Young era with Mike Nolan. Maybe a little bit with Jeff Garcia, but that was a different era as well with the Niners. But again, I think that they're going to work in tandem to try to make this defense right. Again, I'm optimistic about it, but we shall see. Obviously, extending from within, Jake Matthews got a 2-year extension, and long snapper Liam McCullough got a 4-year deal. So I'm going to make sure I got this right. Jake Matthews got a 2-year, $45 million extension. $38 million of that is fully guaranteed. It's going to put him in Atlanta for year 12 and 13. I think that bodes really well for him. His dad only played for the Oilers and Titans, and obviously Bruce Matthews is one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. Jake Matthews is incredibly steady. He doesn't get the love or respect that he deserves, but again, he's the longest senior player on this team. Again, another Ring of Honor type of player. And I'll talk about this here in a second, but I think there's a chance he might actually retire as a Falcon. We'll see. And then Liam McCullough, I think he was what exactly did he get? Liam McCullough, I'm looking this up on the Falcons website. Really great here for you. But yeah, he got extended as well. Again, they're looking to try to make special teams good. Moving off from Josh Harris a couple years ago kind of felt weird for me, but they seem to find this guy. Obviously, we got to hope that Younghoe Koo plays better. Maybe he gets cut. I don't know. But the Falcons can't lose games on special teams. And if they've got a long snapper of note that they trust that wants to be here, then by all means, let's make it happen. So yes, these are the 5 guys of note who are coming here or coming back. So that's exciting here. Moving on to the second half of our show we're asking myself a question. Let's get some blow the whistle. Should Grady Jarrett have been able to retire as an Atlanta Falcon? I'm going to blow the whistle negative. From a sentimental point, yes. I would have loved to have seen that happen. But you got to remember, Matt Ryan didn't retire as a Falcon. Julio Jones didn't retire as a Falcon. Claude Humphrey didn't retire as a Falcon. Tommy Nobis did a long time ago. There's not that many guys who get to have this luxury. People that spend their entire career with one team, it's so rare. Peyton Manning didn't get to do it. Tom Brady didn't get to do it. Brett Favre didn't get to do it. Trying to think who else out there. John Elway is an exception. That's what I'm getting at. Aaron Rodgers didn't get to finish with one team. Drew Brees had to come over. I mean, Steve Young as well, but we're talking some of the best of the best. LaDainian Tomlinson didn't get to finish with one team. It's tough. Grady Jarrett will always be remembered as being being a guy that played his ass off, undersized. I think he's barely 6 feet tall. Played at traditional power Clemson. Was integral in them turning it around there under Dabo Swinney. Had been a part of a playoff run there and 16 Super Bowl run in 16 of the playoff run in 17. Last several years, not so much. 2-time Pro Bowler. We'll see if he has the similar level of success or some success with Chicago. I guess what I'm getting at is, like, for as much as you think people deserve to retire with one team, it's just not really in the cards. Again, this isn't basketball. This isn't baseball. This isn't even hockey. This is the NFL. It's a collision sport, a league driven by parity. You are going to get hurt. And it's not a young man's game, even though Jarrett's now in his 30s or whatever, like, he can play a little bit longer. It's so difficult to forecast this. And hopefully there's not hard feelings. I know Arthur Blank put out a message saying that they really appreciated Grady Jarrett's time here. Obviously, that didn't land very well with the fan base. People are really tired of Arthur Blank. Again, I understand that. Let me take a sip of coffee here real quick and try to tie a bow on this Grady Jarrett sort of conundrum we found ourselves in. Excuse me, yes. I think it just kind of goes to show that, like, we really love our hometown heroes. Jarrett played at Rockdale. He's the son of a Falcons legend, for whatever that's worth. 5th round pick by this team. Certainly got the most out of his talent here. Could have been Super Bowl MVP had we won. He had 3 sacks of Tom Brady as a second-year player. Staple in the community, had been a Walter Payton honoree for this team. Did everything that you would want for an Atlanta Falcon to be. And I guess it's like when you've got a homegrown player, let alone a guy who's from this neck of the woods, again, he's more of a vocal leader than A.J. Terrell is. It's, again, a similar sort of thing. He played at Westlake. He went to Clemson, 1st-round pick. I think anytime you've got some sort of player that, pulls at the heartstrings, kind of represents everything you want to see out of your team, it's challenging because, like, that's what you're hoping for. And it stinks that, like, it's not always going to be a fairy tale ending here. Again, like, football is just so much harder. You could restructure this thing out as far as you want, but at some point the regimes change. You're not going to be playing for one head coach, one coordinator. If your coordinator is good, he's going to go be a head coach somewhere else. If your head coach is bad, you're going to get a new head coach. Give that 2 or 3 of those, you're going to have a new general manager. They're going to rebuild. The franchise will remain the same. The logo, the emblem, if you will, the owner, more likely than not. But this is an ever-changing sport. Like, every year, like, a third of the roster and every team, like, turns over. And that's why people, like, get really emotional when a season ends, especially when it's a really great team, because there's players out there that you love and rooted for, but that they got to go get theirs in free agency. As much as they want to come back, they're not going to take their talent at a discount. Again, there's only so many opportunities to make money as a player here. Your body's going to fail you. Like, for guys to be able to play for one team for 10 years and have the success that Grady Jarrett did, that's awesome. Don't be sad that it's ending. Just be happy that it happened. I would have loved to see him retire as a Falcon, but again, if Matt Ryan couldn't do it, if Julio Jones couldn't do it, like, so many other players who I think are higher up on the pantheon. Even with Roddy White, like, it didn't end perfectly with him. Like, I think he left. He got released after 11 years. Maybe try to stick on with, like, the Titans or Bucks, didn't work out or whatever. But, like, it's such a rarity. So, like, for as much as you would have hoped and wanted that this could have happened for Grady Jarrett, it just wasn't in the cards. Maybe it will be for Jake Matthews, but again, we'll see how much longer he wants to play. But it's a case by case basis. I mean, look at the Atlanta Braves, for example. I mean, John Smoltz, he pitched for the Cardinals and Red Sox. Tom Glavine pitched for the effing Mets. Greg Maddux came over here, played for 10 years, and left. The only guy who finished with the Braves that got drafted was Chipper Jones. Like, that's such a rarity. That's why the players out there like Derek Jeter, Tony Gwynn, George Brett, Chipper Jones, like Robin Yount, it's so special. And those are some of the all-time players in that sport. But again, like baseball is a little bit different. There's no salary cap. There's no salary floor. It's not the same. I would have loved to see Grady Jarrett retire with the Falcons. It wasn't in the cards. Hopefully, whenever it's all said and done, he comes back, signs a one-day contract, and the organization does right by him, which I would hope that they do. I'm praying that they do. Moving on to our penultimate topic here, we're going to go on with some, you like that. I'm kind of hoping that this is the last time we do this because maybe Kirk Cousins is playing for another team. Right now, it seems if he is going to leave, it's looking like it's going to be the Cleveland Browns, but there's also some rumors out there that he might actually stay put in Atlanta. I know that the Browns made a trade. They traded with the Eagles. They got Kenny Pickett, and the Eagles got Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The Browns are still under contract with Deshaun Watson for the next 2 years. He's not going to play this year because he ruptured his Achilles like twice. Cousins would actually fit well with what the Browns are doing. It'd be an opportunity for him to start. He'd reunite with his former offensive coordinator, now head coach of the Browns, Kevin Stefanski. Even though he didn't have a lively arm here with the Falcons, he did grow up in Michigan, so he's used to playing in the cold. He also played for the Vikings, albeit in a dome, but you got to play on the road once a year in Green Bay and Chicago. I think Atlanta is more comfortable holding on to Cousins than you would think. I read this thing from a Pro Football Talk that Mike Flory put it out there. He does a pretty good job of explaining the contract jargonese in a way that I can understand it. The thing that he said was that I think we got wrong with it is the $10 million guarantee. We're like, if he's on this roster, we're going to pay him $10 million if we don't trade him by the fifth day of the league year, so March 15th or whatever it is, like March 17th. Who cares at this point? Like that the Falcons are going to eat it. I think what it does is like it becomes fully guaranteed as opposed to injury based in 26. And at that point, like the Falcons can get out from the contract a little bit easier. Again, I don't know all the jargonese with that, but like the 10 million transfers, and it's not as punitive as we thought it would be. I think for the fact if they paid him like an absurd amount of money, like 60 million last year, money maybe this year it's closer to 20, 25. I think the fact that you're also paying Penix somewhere like, goodness, I don't know. You're paying Penix somewhere in the range of, but a little bit over $1 million. Like you can afford that. Obviously, the allocation of roster space and everything like that. I think the Cousins contract played a part in Dalman potentially walking. Others may feel differently. And that's okay. I just know that like you're paying a lot for a backup quarterback and you're paying pennies on the dollar for your starting quarterback. I also think that like there's other teams out there that could potentially trade for Kirk Cousins. Right now, the Steelers are unsettled at quarterback. Right now, the Giants are unsettled at quarterback. For those who just kind of get caught up to speed across the league, here's kind of what's going on. So Geno Smith got traded from the Seahawks to the Raiders. He reunites with Pete Carroll. He's going to be a starter there in Las Vegas. Replacing him in Seattle is Sam Darnold, leaving the Vikings after 1 year in free agency and signing a massive deal with the Seahawks. I don't think that's going to work out at all for the Seahawks. Just consider me out on Sam Darnold going forward. I could be wrong, but I'm not a fan of this. The New York Jets are done with Aaron Rodgers, who could either go to the Steelers or Giants at this point. They're bringing in Justin Fields, who spent 1 year with the Steelers. He signs a 2-year deal, probably making about $25 million a year. He gets to reunite with his college teammate, Garrett Wilson there from Ohio State on the Jets. To leave the Steelers for the Jets is frightening if you're a Steelers fan. You're going from a team that always finishes above 500 to a team that never makes the playoffs. Shows like, maybe the Steelers are heading towards a downturn at some point. So you're looking across the board for where Cousins could potentially go. There's musical chairs. Again, I've mentioned the Browns. I mentioned the Steelers. I mentioned the Giants. I think there's a chance he could potentially go to the Titans. They have the number 1 pick, but maybe they get a stopgap. Cousins starts, and then eventually they give way to Cam Ward. We'll see what Brian Callahan wants to do there as head coach there for the Titans. But I also think that there's a chance that maybe Cousins ends up staying in Atlanta. Not a lot. There's some. Like it's more than a less than zero chance. Like, he met with Arthur Blank. He says he would prefer to go play somewhere where he could start. We saw what that happened last year. Maybe he's somewhat washed. I don't know. He's going to be a year removed from having, his tearing his Achilles. So maybe he'll come back. He'll be play in the best shape of his life, so to speak. But he's also on the wrong side of 35. So I do think in an ideal situation, Atlanta would trade him so they can recoup some draft capital. And, at this point, try to find a veteran free agent to back up Michael Penix Jr. I thought Jameis Winston would be a good fit for that. We'll see. But I think that, like, Atlanta's not really looking at the quarterback market or offensive side of the ball in the draft. Not really looking very much at that in free agency as well. Every move that they've pretty much made has been on the defensive side of the ball. The only thing of note is, like, they've extended Jake Matthews and they let Drew Dalman walk. So keep that in mind. As far as if he stays put here, I think it's less than 50%, but it's more than zero, maybe closer to 15%. But I will say, though, I think Atlanta's more comfortable holding on to Cousins than we want to lead on. Again, that's something that Terry Fontenot is going to have to wear. But we also know that Penix has had an injury-riddled past. He's missed time both at Indiana and at Washington, and I guess in high school. So if he gets hurt and Cousins knows the system, maybe he goes in there and plays, and we'll see what happens. Maybe that's the Falcons' contingency plan. Again, this is the year they got to make the playoffs. They got to do it. But I also feel that, like, it could get a little volatile here. Cousins is miffed. He's not starting. Penix is the future. Everybody knows that. And we'll see what happens. But if Cleveland is the favorite to get him, then I think they're going to make a trade here possibly over the weekend. We'll see what happens with that. But I think Atlanta's not going to move on for Cousins unless they're absolutely damn sure. Moving on to our final topic here, we're going to be coming to you from the highest perch of Flowery Branch. What kind of spin do you think the organization will put on the team's performance in free agency thus far? Obviously, I think Terry Fontenot is in self-preservation mode, and I think Raheem Morris and Arthur Blank and everybody involved will back him up. I think right now a lot of people from the Falcons are up at Georgia's Pro Day today in Athens trying to see, okay, do we want Malachi Starks? Do we want Michael Williams? Do we want Jalen Walker? Maybe we can get Dan Jackson in the 7th round. Things like that. A lot of players and a lot of people in the NFL are at Georgia's Pro Day. So keep that in mind. But I think when they come back and they talk about free agency, again, the free agency officially opens here in a few hours on Wednesday afternoon. The legal tampering period has been in effect since noon on Monday. I think the new league year starts at 4:00 Eastern today, Wednesday, March 12th. So keep that in mind. A lot of these deals you've seen will be finalized. But again, this isn't the best free agency class across the board. So it's not like we're not looking for home runs here. We're looking for singles, doubles, maybe. If the guy's wide open, just throw it to him in the end zone and get those 6 points. But I think Atlanta will have a concise message about what happened. They'll say, yeah, it stinks that we had to let Drew Dalman walk and Grady Jarrett go. I don't think anything they're going to say is going to really quell the fan base. I think the only thing they can do is win. And raising ticket prices, that's not going to help. Just win. That's all you need to do. Just win. That was not bad. Thanks for checking in with me today here on a Wednesday. This is the Blog and Dirty Podcast. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter at the X at Buhler118. You can follow the show on YouTube at Blog and Dirty FS. Be sure to read all the Atlanta Falcons content on Blog and Dirty. There's a bunch of good stuff put out there by our regional betting team. They're on ATL All Day, the site that I originally came from. You can read all my work about the Falcons, NFL, college football, Braves, baseball, college basketball. March Madness is starting there on fansided.com. Be sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Really helps the show grow. Again, I know I've been talking a lot the last few weeks, just been myself on here. It's kind of an interesting part of the year. But once you kind of get in the heart of the offseason, I plan on bringing back more guests, just kind of figuring out what the angle I want to do with that is. But the show is really starting to grow. I'm really glad to have a longer runway heading into next season as opposed to just getting started last year at the end of July. Again, I was starting to do video both on here and on False Start. Been doing this now for several months. Still don't know if I'm great at it, but like I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking to you guys for about 45 minutes or an hour or so. Every week, maybe twice on False Start with my colleague Cody Williams if he's on. Hopefully he's back on the show this week after moving. Hopefully he's got internet in Santa Fe. That would be utterly fantastic. So yeah, just keep an open mind with what happens in free agency and in the draft. We all hated the Penix pick. And now we look at having the most marketable star we've had for the Falcons since Michael Vick. So what do we honestly know? Yes, man, crazy show today. Once again, thanks for listening. And this is the Blog and Dirty Podcast.